Chapter 1. A Private Conversation. Last week, I went to the theater. I had a very good seat. The play was very interesting. I did not enjoy it. A young man and a young woman were sitting behind me. They were talking loudly. I got very angry. I could not hear the actors. I turned round. I looked at the man and the woman angrily. They did not pay any attention. In the end, I could not bear it. I turned round again. "I can't hear a word," I said angrily. "It's none of your business," the young man said rudely. "This is a private conversation." Chapter 2. Breakfast or lunch? It was Sunday. I never get up early on Sundays. I sometimes stay in bed until lunchtime. Last Sunday, I got up very late. I looked out of the window. It was dark outside. What a day, I thought. It's raining again. Just then the telephone rang. It was my Aunt Lucy. "I've just arrived by train," she said. "I'm coming to see you." "But I'm still having breakfast," I said. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm having breakfast," I repeated. "Dear me," she said. "Do you always get up so late? It's 1 o'clock." Chapter 3. Please send me a card. Postcards always spoil my holidays. Last summer, I went to Italy. I visited museums and sat in public gardens. A friendly waiter taught me a few words of Italian. Then he lent me a book. I read a few lines, but I did not understand a word. Every day I thought about postcards. My holidays passed quickly, but I did not send any cards to my friends. On the last day, I made a big decision. I got up early and bought 37 cards. I spent the whole day in my room, but I did not write a single card. Chapter 4. An exciting trip. I have just received a letter from my brother Tim. He is in Australia. He has been there for 6 months. Tim is an engineer. He is working for a big firm and he has already visited a great number of different places in Australia. He has just bought an Australian car and has gone to Alice Springs, a small town in the center of Australia. He will soon visit Darwin. From there, he will fly to Perth. My brother has never been abroad before, so he is finding this trip is very exciting. Chapter 5. No wrong numbers. Mr. James Scott has a garage in Silbury and now he has just bought another garage in Pinehurst. Pinehurst is only 5 meals from Silbury. But Mr. Scott cannot get a telephone for his new garage. So he has just pulled 12 pigeons. Yesterday, a pigeon carried the first message from Pinehurst to Silbury. The bird covered the distance in 3 minutes. Up to now, Mr. Scott has sent a great many requests for spare parts and other urgent messages from one garage to the other. In this way, he has begun his own private telephone service. Chapter 6. Percy Burdens. I have just moved to a house in Bridge Street. Yesterday, a beggar knocked at my door. He asked me for a meal and a glass of milk. In return for this, the beggar stood on his head and sang songs. I gave him a meal. He ate the food and drank the milk. Then he put a piece of cheese in his pocket and went away. Later, a neighbor told me about him. Everybody knows him. His name is Percy Burdens. He calls at every house in the street once a month and always asks for a meal and a glass of milk. Chapter 7. Too late. The plane was late and detectives were waiting at the airport all morning. They were expecting a valuable parcel of diamonds from South Africa. A few hours earlier, someone had told the police that thieves would try to steal the diamonds. When the plane arrived, some of the detectives were waiting inside the main building, while others were waiting on the airfield. Two men took the parcel off the plane and carried it into the customs house, while two detectives were keeping guard at the door. Two others opened the parcel. To their surprise, the precious parcel was full of stones and sand. Chapter 8. The Best and the Worst. Joe Sanders has the most beautiful garden in our town. Nearly everybody enters for the nicest garden competition each year, but Joe wins every time. Bill Fritz's garden is larger than Joe's. Bill works harder than Joe and grows more flowers and vegetables. But Joe's garden is more interesting. He has made neat pots and has built a wooden bridge over a pool. I like gardens too, but I do not like hard work. Every year I enter for the garden competition too, and I always win a little prize for the worst garden in the town. Chapter 9. A Cold Welcome. On Wednesday evening, we went to the town hall. It was the last day of the year, and a large crowd of people had gathered under the town hall clock. It would strike 12 in 20 minutes' time. 15 minutes passed, and then, at 5 to 12, the clock stopped. The big minute hand did not move. We waited and waited, but nothing happened. Suddenly, someone shouted, "It's 2 minutes past 12! The clock has stopped!" I looked at my watch. It was true. The big clock refused to welcome the new year. At that moment, everybody began to laugh and sing. Chapter 10. Not for Jazz. We have an old musical instrument. It is called a clavichord. It was made in Germany in 1681. Our clavichord is kept in the living room. It has belonged to our family for a long time. The instrument was bought by my grandfather many years ago. Recently, it was damaged by a visitor. She tried to play jazz on it. She struck the keys too hard, and 2 of the strings were broken. My father was shocked. Now we are not allowed to touch it. It is being repaired by a friend of my father's. Chapter 11. One good turn deserves another. I was having dinner at a restaurant when Harry Steele came in. Harry worked in a lawyer's office years ago, but he is now working at a bank. He gets a good salary, but he always borrows money from his friends and never pays it back. Harry saw me and came and sat at the same table. He has never borrowed money from me. While he was eating, I asked him to lend me 2 million rupiah. To my surprise, he gave me the money immediately. "I have never borrowed any money from you," Harry said. So now you can pay for my dinner. Chapter 12. Goodbye and good luck. Our neighbor, Captain Charles Allison, will sail from Portsmouth tomorrow. We shall meet him at the harbor early in the morning. He will be in his small boat, Topsail. Topsail is a famous little boat. It has sailed across the Atlantic many times. Captain Allison will set out at 8 o'clock, so we shall have plenty of time. We shall see his boat and then we shall say goodbye to him. He will be away for 2 months. We are very proud of him. He will take part in an important race across the Atlantic. Chapter 13. The Greenwood Boys. The Greenwood Boys are a group of popular singers. At present, they are visiting all parts of the country. They will be arriving here tomorrow. They will be coming by train. And most of the young people in the town will be meeting them at the station. Tomorrow evening, they will be singing at the Workers' Club. The Greenwood Boys will be staying for 5 days. During this time, they will give 5 performances. As usual, the police will have a difficult time. They will be trying to keep order. It is always the same on these occasions. Chapter 14. Do you speak English? I had an amusing experience last year. After I had left a small village in the south of France, I stopped and he asked me for a lift. As soon as he had got into the car, I said good morning to him in French, and he replied in the same language. Apart from a few words, I do not know any French at all. Neither of us spoke during the journey. I had nearly reached the town, when the young man suddenly said very slowly, "Do you speak English?" As I soon learned, he was English himself. Chapter 15. Good news. The secretary told me that Mr. Harmsworth would see me. I felt very nervous when I went into his office. He did not look up from his desk when I entered. After I had sat down, he said that business was very bad. He told me that the firm could not afford to pay such large salaries. 20 people had already left. I knew that my turn had come. "Mr. Harmsworth," I said in a weak voice. "Don't interrupt," he said. Then he smiled and told me I would receive an extra £100 a year. Chapter 16. A polite request. If you park your car in the wrong place, a traffic policeman will soon find it. You will be very lucky if he lets you go without a ticket. However, this does not always happen. Traffic police are sometimes very polite. During a holiday in Sweden, I found this note on my car. "Sir, we welcome you to our city. This is a no parking area. You will enjoy your stay here if you pay attention to our street signs. This note is only a reminder." If you receive a request like this, you cannot fail to obey it. Chapter 17. Always young. My Aunt Jennifer is an actress. She must be at least 35 years old. In spite of this, she often appears on the stage as a young girl. Jennifer will have to take part in a new play soon. This time, she will be a girl of 17. In the play, she must appear in a bright red dress and long black stockings. Last year, in another play, she had to wear short socks and a bright orange-colored dress. If anyone ever asks her how old she is, She always answers, "My dear." It must be terrible to be grown up. Chapter 18. He often does this. After I had lunch at the village inn, I looked for my bag. I had left it on a chair beside the door, and now it wasn't there. As I was looking for it, the innkeeper came in. "Did you have a good meal?" he asked. "Yes, thank you," I answered. "But I can't pay the bill. I haven't got my bag." The innkeeper smiled and immediately went out. In a few minutes he returned with my bag and gave it back to me. "I'm very sorry," he said. "My dog had taken it into the garden. He often does this." Chapter 19. Sold Out. "The play may begin at any moment," I said. "It may have begun already," Susan answered. I hurried to the ticket office. "May I have 2 tickets, please?" I asked. "I'm sorry, we have sold out," the girl said. What a pity," Susan exclaimed. Just then, man hurried to the ticket office. Can I return these 2 tickets?" he asked. "Certainly," the girl said. I went back to the ticket office at once. "Could I have those 2 tickets, please?" I asked. "Certainly," the girl said. "But they are for next Wednesday's performance. Do you still want them?" Mm, uh, I might as well have them," I said sadly. Chapter 20. One Man in a Boat. Fishing is my favorite sport. I often fish for hours without catching anything. But this does not worry me. Some fishermen are unlucky. Instead of catching fish, they catch old boots and rubbish. I am even less lucky. I never catch anything, not even old boots. After having spent whole mornings on the river, I always go home with an empty bag. "You must give up fishing," my friends say. "It's wasted of time." But they don't realize one important thing. I'm not really interested in fishing. I'm only interested in sitting in a boat and doing nothing at all. Chapter 21. Mad or not? Aeroplanes are slowly driving me mad. I live near an airport and passing planes can be heard night and day. The airport was built during the war, but for some reasons it could not be used then. Last year, however, it came into use. Over 100 people must have been driven away from their homes by the noise. I am one of the few people left. Sometimes I think this house will be knocked down by a passing plane. I have been offered a large sum of money to go away, but I am determined to stay here. Everybody says I must be mad, and they are probably right. Chapter 22. A Glass Envelope. My daughter Jane never dreams of receiving a letter from a girl of her own age in Holland. Last year, We were traveling across the channel, and Jane put a piece of paper with her name and address on it into a bottle. She, she threw the bottle into the sea. She never thought of it again. But 10 months later, she received a letter from a girl in Holland. Both girls write to each other regularly now. However, they have decided to use the post office. Letters will cost a little more, but they will certainly travel faster. Chapter 23. A New House. I had a letter from my sister yesterday. She lives in Nigeria. In her letter, she said that she would come to England next year. If she comes, she will get a surprise. We are now living in a beautiful new house in the country. Work on it had begun before my sister left. The house was completed 5 months ago. In my letter, I told her that she could stay with us. The house has many large rooms and there is a lovely garden. It is a very modern house, so it looks strange to some people. It must be the only modern house in the district. Chapter 24. It could be worse. I entered the hotel manager's office and sat down. I had just lost £50 and I felt very upset. I left the money in my room, I said, and it's not there now. The manager was sympathetic, but he could do nothing. Everyone's losing money these days, he said. He started to complain about this wicked word, but was interrupted by a knock at the door. A girl came in and put an envelope on his desk. It contained £50. I found this outside this gentleman's room, she said. Well, I said to the managers, there is still some honesty in this world. Chapter 25. Do the English speak English? I arrived in London at last. The railway station was big, black and dark. I did not know the way to my hotel, so I asked a porter. I not only spoke English very carefully, but very clearly as well. The porter, however, could not understand me. I repeated my question several times and at last he understood. He answered me, but he spoke neither slowly nor clearly. I am a foreigner, I said. Then he spoke slowly, but I could not understand him. My teacher never spoke English like that. The porter and I looked at each other and smiled. Then he said something and I understood it. You all should learn English, he said. I wonder, in England, each man speaks a different language. The English understand each other, but I don't understand them. Do they speak English? Chapter 26. The Best Art Critics. I am an art student and I paint a lot of pictures. Many people pretend that they understand modern art. They always tell you what a picture is about Of course, many pictures are not about anything. They are just pretty patterns. We like them in the same way that we like pretty certain material. I think that young children often appreciate modern pictures better than anyone else. They notice more. My sister is only 7, but she always tells me whether my pictures are good or not. She came into my room yesterday. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I am hanging this picture on the wall," I answered. "It's a new one. Do you like it?" She looked at it critically for a moment. "It's all right," she said. "But isn't it upside down?" I looked at it again. She was right. It was. Chapter 27. A Wet Night. Late in the afternoon, the boys put up their tent in the middle of a field. As soon as this was done, they cooked. As soon as this was done, they cooked a meal over an open fire. They were all hungry and the food smelled good. After a wonderful meal, they told stories and sang songs by the campfire. But some time later it began to rain. It began to rain. The boys felt tired, so they put out the fire and crept into their tent. Their sleeping bags were warm and comfortable, so they all slept soundly. In the middle of the night, the boys woke up and began shouting. The tent was full of water. They all leaped out of their sleeping bags and hurried outside. It was raining heavily, and they found that a stream had formed in the field. The stream wound its way across the field and then flowed right under their tent. Chapter 28. No Parking. Jasper White is one of those rare people who believes in ancient myths. He has just bought a new house in the city, but ever since he moved in, he has had trouble with motorists. When he returns home at night, he always finds that someone has parked a car outside his gate. Because of this, he has not been able to get his own car into his garage even once. Jasper has put up no parking signs outside his gate, but these have not had any effect. Now he has put an ugly stone head over the gate. Now he has put an ugly stone head over the gate. It is one of the ugliest faces I have ever seen. I asked him what it was, and he told me that it was Medusa, the Gorgon. Jasper hopes that she will turn motorists to stone, but no one of them has been turned to stone yet. It's funny story. Chapter 29. Taxi. Captain Ben Fawcett has bought an unusual taxi and has begun a new service. The taxi is a small Swiss aeroplane called a Pilatus Porter. This wonderful plane can carry 7 passengers. The most surprising thing about it, however, is that it can land anywhere, on snow, water, or even on a plowed field. Captain Fawcett's first passenger was a doctor who flew from Birmingham to a lonely village in the Welsh Mountains. Since then, Captain Fawcett has flown passengers to many unusual places. Once he landed on the roof of a block of flats, and on another occasion he landed in a deserted car park. Captain Fawcett has just refused a string request from a businessman. The man wanted to fly to Rockall, a lonely island in the Atlantic Ocean, but Captain Fawcett did not take him because the trip was too dangerous. Chapter 30. Football or polo? The Wyle is a small river that cuts across the park near my home. I like sitting by the whale on fine afternoon. It was warm last Sunday, so I went and sat on the river bank as usual. Some children were playing games on the bank, and there were some people rowing on the river. Suddenly, one of the children kicked a ball very hard, and it went towards a passing boat. Some people on the bank called out to the man in the boat, but he did not hear them. The ball struck him so hard that he nearly fell into the water. It turned to look at the children, but there weren't any in sight. They had all run away. The man laughed when he realized what had happened. He called out the children and threw the ball back to the bank. Chapter 31. Success Story. Yesterday afternoon, Frank Hawkins was telling me about his experiences as a young man. Frank is now the head of a very large business company. But as a boy he used to work in a small shop. It was his job to repair bicycles, and at that time he used to work 14 hours a day. He saved money for years, and in 1938 he bought a small workshop of his own. During the war, Frank used to make spare parts for aeroplanes. At that time, he had two helpers. By the end of the war, the small workshop had become a large factory which employed 728 people. Frank smiled when he remembered his early years and the long road to success. He was still smiling when the door opened and his wife came in. She wanted him to repair their son's bicycle. Chapter 32. Shopping Made Easy. People are not so honest as they once were. The temptation to steal is greater than ever before, especially in large shops. A detective recently watched a well-dressed a woman who always went into a large store on Monday mornings. One Monday, there were fewer people in the shop than usual when the woman came in, so it was easier for the detective to watch her. The woman first bought a few small articles. After a little time, she chose one of the most expensive dresses in the shop and handed it to an assistant who wrapped it up for her as quickly as possible. Then the woman simply took the parcel and walked out of the shop without paying. When she was arrested, the detectives found out that the shop assistant was her daughter. The girl gave her mother a free dress once a week. Chapter 33. Out of the Darkness. Nearly a week passed before the girl was able to explain what had happened to her. One afternoon she set out from the coast in a small boat and was caught in a storm. Towards evening, the boat struck a rock and the girl jumped into the sea. Then she swam to the shore after spending the whole night in the water. During the time, she covered a distance of 8 miles. Only next morning, she saw a light ahead. She knew she was near the shore because the light was high up on the cliffs. On arriving at the shore, the girl struggled up the cliff towards the light she had seen. That was all she remembered when she woke up a day later. She found herself in hospital. Chapter 34. Quick Work. Ted Robinson has been worried all the week. Last Tuesday, he received a letter from the local police. In the letter, he